The strongest ninja has arrived.
Hanzo is a very unique character when it comes to gameplay, but with that, it also comes with a set of its own unique problem. So I'm going to discuss and talk about his ability and how I would change it to improve it. Okay, let's talk about his passive and the problem I have with it. And the problem with his passive is that he doesn't have one. His current passive is not actually his, but rather his ultimate. Because of all the ability, the only thing his effect is his ultimate, and that's it. A hero passive should dictate more than just the ultimate duration. It should influence them as a whole, and so I have brought up two examples to compare to Hanzo. Let's take Esmeralda for example. Her passive and her abilities synergize with each other very well. Her passive allows her to deal damage through shield while giving them shield, and her first ability absorb those shield. Second ability, deal damage and also reduce the first ability cooldown, while her ultimate root the enemy so that she can absorb more shield. Her passive alone helped define her as someone who able to deal with hero with massive shield. And if we look back at Hanzo, his passive doesn't really work or synergize with his ability at all. It doesn't even synergize with his ultimate because it's act more as a mana. Okay, before we move on, I want to bring up another example to compare to Hanzo passive, and that would be Ling. The reason I brought Ling passive to compare with Hanzo because in essence they are the same passive. And the reason they are the same because both of them act as an alternate form of mana/energy for both of individual hero. So if both have the same passive, then why is Ling passive is better? That is simple because Ling, unlike Hanzo, have a real passive, and that real passive come from the second part of the Cloud Walker. Ling passive have two parts. The first part, as I mentioned before, act as an alternate version of mana/energy for him, and the second part, his real passive, is him getting double the crit chance, but in return it dealing less damage. And if you look at his second part of the passive, you can see that it influenced him in a lot of way because it's worked well with his ability and it also influenced his build path. If you look at the top build, you can see all of them include Windwalker and Berserker Fury, two items that give crit chance. And again, if we look back at Hanzo, his passive does not influence him in any way. The only thing it's a fact is the duration of his ultimate. Okay, now let's talk about his first ability, Ninjutsu Demon Feast. So this is how his first ability function. On the 5th basic attack, he unlocks it, and that's allow him to devour either a jungle creep, a minion, or deal true damage to a turtle or lord. As far as I know, this is the only ability in the game that does not affect any hero on the map, not even himself, because it doesn't give him new stat, it doesn't buff his current stat. The only thing he gained from using his first ability is gold, experience, and the jungle buff. Obviously, you cannot use it on the allies, you cannot use it on the enemy, so essentially this ability does not affect anyone directly. The only primary use is to steal the enemy buff, that's how you impact the enemy. And using it to steal buff also comes with its own problem, because his first ability doesn't have a lot of range, and you need to deal 5 basic attack in order to unlock it. So you need to deal 5 basic attack, then walk up to the enemy jungle, then steal the buff. Remember, you don't have any mobility, so if they catch you in their jungle, most likely you're going to die. Okay, technically he does have a mobility with his ultimate, but I'll explain why it's not a very good mobility skill. But first, let's talk about his second ability, which is Ninjutsu Soul Reap. Hanzo summoned Demon Spike on a target area, and when it hit an enemy, it dealt damage over time, and each time it hit a unit, it gave him 1 demon blood. This ability is pretty good overall, consider it has some flexibility to it. This ability is mainly used to farm demon blood, consider Hanzo really need those things in order to be useful. You can also use it to check the bushes in the map. If you put a spike on a bush and it disappears, it means that there is no enemy in it. But if you put it on a bush and you gain demon blood and the spike do not disappear, it means that there are enemy within the bush. And since it has decent range, you can reliably use it to poke the enemy also. Okay, let's talk about Hanzo Ultimate. He had one of, if not the best, ultimate in the entire game. Kinjitsu, Pinnacle of Ninja. This ability gives Hanzo 25 demon blood and transforming into a demon, leaving his body behind. In demon form, Hanzo received movement buff, he able to go through wall, and also receive a new set of ability. The reason his ultimate is so great because his new ability is really strong, and even if you manage to kill the demon, it will not kill Hanzo. So essentially you able to dive the enemy in their turret and come out with minimal consequences. Because if you die in the demon form, all you get is a stun and a slow on your main body, and that's it. Okay, so now let's talk his new ability that he get when turned into the demon form. Ninjutsu Demon Thorn. Just like in his base form, this ability requires 5 basic attack in order to unlock it. But when you unlock it, Hanzo burrow into the ground that lunges at his enemy. Okay, there are 2 reasons why this ability is great. First is invincibility. When Hanzo used this skill, he burrow onto the ground, making him invincible and not able to be targeted or affected by any ability. Second reason is damage. This ability scale off 2 things. First, obviously, is physical attack, and second, it scale off the enemy max HP. So essentially, the more HP they have, the more damage Hanzo will deal. Okay, now let's talk about his second ability, Ninjutsu Devastator. Hanzo will fly to a targeted area as the demon slashing those areas. If there is no enemy, Hanzo will stop, but if there is enemy, Hanzo will continue slashing in total of 8 times. There are a few great things about this ability. First, of course, is invincibility. When Hanzo fly to the target location, he become invincible as he cannot be targeted or damaged in that instant. Second is the range. This ability have good range, allowing him to chase the enemy within an instant. And another great thing is that this slashes is count as basic attack, so potentially you can unlock your first ability without doing any basic attack yourself. Okay, now that we talk all about his ability, let's talk about something that I mentioned before, that this ability is the only real mobility Hanzo have. When Hanzo is in demon form, he have 3 options. The first one is to retract his demon form back to his main body. The second option is to let the demon blood run out and his body will chase the demon. And the third option, the one I consider his mobility, is that he teleport his main body to the demon itself. The reason I don't consider it to be a good mobility because when you use it there is an animation, and also when you use it you leave a vulnerable body behind which the enemy can kill. So what this means is by you escaping the danger that you are in, you leave your main body which can be killed in a dangerous position. And I also don't count Jitsu Devastator as his mobility since it does not impact his main body but only his demon form. But of course you can use this ability to combo with his teleportation to the demon ability. Okay, now that I talk about his problem and him as a whole, let's talk about things I would change to make him better. The first thing I would do is that I give him a real passive, a passive in which help him become a stronger character. I would center his new passive around his theme, in which is the strongest ninja. So, what do the strong do? They adapt and they evolve. So his new passive would be, if you use his first ability, Ninjutsu Demon Feast, X amount of time, you would be able to evolve one of his ability. The reason I would give him this passive because A, it does not impact his early game plan, but rather embrace it, since it require and reward Hanzo for farming with his ability. B, I want his main body to be somewhat viable in the late game because currently his main body is useless. The only time he's useful is when he become the demon form. Okay, now let's talk about his evolve first ability. Now the thing that I would give him is obvious, is that the ability to lock onto an enemy. And instead of dealing damage, it would root them in place and giving you Hanzo a movement buff. I think this is a good idea because now he has something that he can use on the enemy that could stop them so that he can run away or catch up with them, or his teammate to catch up to them. What I have in mind for his second ability is this. His damage, instead of dealing it over each time, it deals one time only in bursts. And when it deals damage, it's also knock up the enemy, just like Julian Ultimate. When it comes to his ultimate, I have one thing to add, and that is a damage reduction on his main body when he becomes the demon form, so that when the enemy attack his main body, he could have time to react. And that's about it. If you have any suggestion or anything you want to add, you can do so in the comment. If you enjoyed the video, check out these other two as well.